Tom and Maria lived in a small, quiet neighborhood filled with green lawns and tall trees. Their home was simple but beautiful. Maria loved flowers and spent hours in her garden. She planted roses, lilies, and tulips in neat rows that made the front yard look colorful. Tom liked to mow the grass every weekend. Everything around their home looked peaceful. One sunny morning, Maria walked outside to water her plants. She noticed a white envelope stuck to their front door. It had the stamp of the neighborhood's homeowners association. She opened it and started reading. Her smile slowly faded as her eyes moved down the page. The letter said she was being fined $625 for breaking neighborhood rules. The reason written on the paper made her confused. It said she had planted unauthorized vegetation that was too tall and disrupted the community's uniform look. Maria sighed and went back inside the house. Tom was sitting at the table reading the newspaper. She placed the letter in front of him. "Tom, can you look at this? They say I planted something wrong," she said. Tom put down his newspaper and read the letter carefully. He frowned. "This doesn't make any sense," he said. "You only have flowers here. Everything is neat." "There's nothing wrong," Maria nodded. "It says we must pay $675 within 10 days or face additional action. That's too much money for flowers." She tried to stay calm but felt frustrated. Tom stood up. "Don't worry. We'll talk to them. Maybe it's a mistake," he said. Later that day, Maria decided to visit the HOA office. The office was a small building near the entrance of the neighborhood. She walked in and found a woman sitting behind the desk. The woman had a sharp look on her face. Her name tag said Linda. She was known in the neighborhood for being strict about every small rule. People called her the rule keeper. Maria smiled politely. "Good morning. I got a letter about a fine, but I think there's been a mistake," she said. Linda looked up from her papers and gave a short nod. "Name and address?" she asked. Maria told her. Linda typed something on her computer and said, "You violated Section 8B. Plants above 18 inches are not allowed near the mailbox." "Your bush was over that height," Maria tried to explain. "That's not a bush. It's just a small rose plant. I trimmed it last week." "It's not tall anymore," Linda looked annoyed. "We have pictures. The rules are rules. You must pay the fine by Friday," she said firmly. Maria took a deep breath. "Can I see the pictures?" she asked. Linda turned the computer screen around. The picture showed her garden, but the angle made the rose plant look taller than it was. Maria tried to explain again. "This is not right. The camera angle makes it look bigger." Linda shook her head. "The board already approved the fine. You can't argue about it. If you don't pay, we will take further steps." Maria was quiet for a moment. She knew arguing would not help. "Thank you for your time," she said, and left the office. On the way home, she felt upset. She loved her garden and always followed the rules. She did not understand why the HOA was being so unfair. When she told Tom what happened, he became angry. "They can't just make up rules," he said. "We'll check the rule book ourselves." Tom opened the HOA handbook that came when they bought the house. He read every line about plants and gardens. After half an hour, he looked up. "Maria, there's nothing in here about 18 inches. They changed the rule recently, but they never told us," he said. Maria shook her head. "That's not fair. They should have sent a notice before adding new rules." Tom agreed. "We're not paying this fine. Let them come and explain it." 2 days later, another letter arrived. It said final notice. It warned that if they didn't pay, the HOA would take necessary actions. Tom placed the letter on the table and laughed softly. "They are trying to scare us. We did nothing wrong." Maria was less calm. "I don't want any trouble. What if they send someone again?" That evening, they saw Linda walking down the street with her clipboard. She stopped in front of their house and took photos of the garden again. Tom stepped outside and said, "Good evening. Can I help you?" Linda gave a short smile. "Just checking for compliance," she said. Tom replied, "We already talked about this. There's nothing wrong here." Linda ignored his words and walked away. The next morning, Maria saw Linda talking to another neighbor across the street. The neighbor looked uncomfortable. Maria guessed Linda was giving her trouble too. It made Maria realize that she was not the only one being targeted. Over the next few days, Tom noticed that several neighbors had received small fines too. One man was fined for having his garbage can visible from the road. Another was fined for having a small decorative light near his driveway. Everyone was tired of the rules, but no one wanted to argue with Linda. Maria, however, decided to stand firm. She sent a letter to the HOA board, clearly explaining that the fine was not fair and that she had proof of following all garden rules. She attached pictures of her yard showing the plant's true height. She asked for a proper review. When Linda received the letter, she was not pleased. She called the HOA president and complained that Maria was being uncooperative. The president told her to calm down and wait for the next board meeting. But Linda did not like waiting. She believed rules should be obeyed without question. A few evenings later, Tom and Maria were having dinner when they heard someone knocking on their door. Maria opened it and found Linda standing there again. Her arms were crossed and she looked impatient. "Did you pay the fine?" she asked. Maria stayed calm. "No, I already sent a letter explaining why it's unfair." Linda frowned. "If you don't pay, we'll have to take this to the next level," she said. Tom came to the door and asked, "What level?" "We didn't break any law." Linda looked uncomfortable but said, "We'll see about that." Then she walked away quickly. Maria felt nervous. "What does she mean?" she asked. Tom tried to comfort her. "She's bluffing. She can't do anything. This is just a garden rule." That night, Maria couldn't sleep well. She kept thinking about Linda's words. She had never liked conflicts, but this situation felt unfair. Tom promised her that he would handle it if it continued. The next morning, as Maria was watering her flowers, she saw a police car slowly driving down the street. It stopped near their driveway. Her heart started beating fast. The sheriff stepped out and looked around. Maria called Tom outside. "Maybe it's not about us," she whispered. The sheriff looked at a paper in his hand and then walked toward them. "Good morning. I'm looking for Mr. and Mrs. Harris," he said. Tom nodded. "That's us." "Is there a problem?" The sheriff glanced at his notes. "We received a complaint from your HOA representative. She said there was a dispute about unpaid fines," he said. Maria's mouth fell open slightly. "You mean Linda called the police?" she asked. The sheriff nodded slowly. "Yes, ma'am. I just need to hear your side before doing anything." Tom took a deep breath. "Officer, this is about a flower plant. We didn't break any law." The sheriff listened carefully and looked around the garden. He saw neat flowers and no sign of any problem. He nodded thoughtfully. Maria looked nervous but calm. The sheriff smiled lightly and said, "I see what's going on. Don't worry, I'll handle this properly." He turned toward the street where Linda's house stood. Maria and Tom watched as he walked away toward her door. Something told them that this day was not going to end quietly. The morning air was calm and the sound of birds filled the neighborhood, but Maria's heart was not calm at all. She watched as the sheriff walked down the street toward Linda's house. She stood beside Tom, holding her hands together. Tom tried to stay relaxed, but he could feel the tension rising inside. He had never thought a small garden plant could bring the police to their home. Across the road, curtains moved as curious neighbors peeked through their windows. Everyone knew Linda liked to make noise over small things, but calling the police was new even for her. The sheriff reached Linda's front yard and knocked on her door. She opened it right away as if she had been waiting. She stepped out with her clipboard and a serious face. "Officer, I'm glad you came," she said. "These people are refusing to follow our rules. They owe the association $675 and they refuse to pay. We need you to make them comply." The sheriff looked calm. "Ma'am, I'm here to understand what's going on. A fine from the homeowners association is not a criminal issue. It's a civil matter," he said. Linda frowned. "But they are breaking the rules. The whole community has to follow the rules," she insisted. The sheriff nodded. "I understand that, but my duty is to deal with criminal complaints. HOA rules are private agreements between you and the homeowners. I can't enforce them with police action unless there's a real crime." Linda's face turned red. She did not like being corrected. "Then what is the point of having an association if people can just ignore it?" she asked sharply. The sheriff stayed polite. "The point is to manage community matters, but you have to handle disputes through the board, not through law enforcement. Now let's go together and talk to the homeowners." Linda crossed her arms but followed him anyway. Together they walked back to Maria and Tom's house. Maria stood near the garden with Tom beside her. The sheriff smiled gently. "Good morning again. I just wanted to clear this up," he said. Linda stepped forward before Maria could speak. They are ignoring our notices. They're plant breaks, the community code, and I'm trying to make sure everyone follows the same rules, she said. Maria took a slow breath. Officer, this is not about rules. It's about fairness. I have followed every rule since we moved in. I trimmed this plant as required, and I even sent pictures. The rule she is talking about was added later, but we were never informed. Tom nodded. We checked the handbook ourselves. It doesn't say anything about the plant height she mentioned. The sheriff listened carefully. He looked at Linda and asked, "Can you show me the specific rule they broke?" Linda opened her clipboard and turned a few pages. She pointed to a paragraph that mentioned plant height near mailboxes. The sheriff read it slowly and then said, "This looks like a new rule. Was it communicated to all residents before it took effect?" Linda hesitated. "Well, the board discussed it last month. Notices were supposed to go out," Maria spoke up. "We never got one, no email, no letter, nothing." Tom added, "And even if we had, our plant is not that tall. You can see it yourself." The sheriff walked closer to the garden. He bent down, measured the height roughly with his hand, and said, "This plant is about 1 foot tall. It's not a problem at all." He turned back to Linda. "Ma'am, I don't see any violation that would need police involvement." Linda's lips tightened. "They are lying. The photo clearly showed it taller." The sheriff remained calm. "Pictures can be misleading depending on angle and time. I can only go by what I see. And what I see here is a peaceful home and a tidy garden." Maria and Tom felt a little relief. Some of the neighbors had stepped outside now, pretending to check their mail while listening carefully. They all wanted to see what would happen next. Linda grew more impatient. "So you're not going to do anything?" she asked. The sheriff looked at her politely. "There's nothing to do. This is an HOA issue, not a police issue. I can't arrest someone for not paying a private fine. If you have a complaint about violence or property damage, that's different. But this is just about flowers." Linda looked embarrassed. She didn't like being told she was wrong in front of others. "I was only trying to maintain order," she said in a lower voice. Maria smiled gently. "We all want the neighborhood to look nice, Linda. I understand that, but you can't punish people for things that don't even break the rules." The sheriff nodded. "She's right. It's good to keep things nice, but it has to be fair. I'd suggest you both talk to the HOA board again and resolve this calmly." Linda didn't respond. She turned around and walked away quickly toward her house. The sheriff turned to Maria and Tom. "I'm sorry you had to deal with this. Some people take their job too seriously," he said kindly. Maria smiled, feeling a little lighter. "Thank you, officer. I appreciate your help." Tom shook his hand. "You were very professional. We just want peace here." The sheriff nodded. "I understand. I'll write a small report saying this was a misunderstanding and no action was required. That way no one can twist the story later." When he left, the neighbors who had been watching started walking over. One of them, an older man named Rick, said, "That woman has gone too far this time. Calling the cops over a flower bush? That's crazy." Maria smiled softly. "Maybe now she'll stop doing this to everyone." Rick nodded. "She's been giving me trouble too. Last month she said my garden hose was visible from the street and fined me $50. I paid it because I didn't want drama. But maybe I shouldn't have." Tom said, "You shouldn't have to. It's just a way for her to feel in control. We're going to talk to the board again. Maybe if more neighbors join us, they'll listen." Rick agreed. "Count me in." Later that evening, Maria made tea for Tom. They sat on the porch watching the sun go down. The air was calm again, but Maria couldn't shake the feeling that Linda wouldn't stop so easily. "Do you think she'll come back?" she asked. Tom looked thoughtful. "Probably, but now the sheriff knows what's going on. If she tries anything again, it will only make her look worse." Maria nodded slowly. "I hope so. I just want to live peacefully and take care of my plants." The next morning, Maria went for a short walk around the block. She noticed a few neighbors talking in small groups. When she passed by, they smiled at her. Some even thanked her quietly for standing up to Linda. It made her feel supported. Later that day, Tom received a call from the HOA office. It was the board president. His voice was calm but serious. "Mr. Harris, we heard about the situation yesterday. The sheriff called me to report what happened. I just want you to know we'll be reviewing this fine and the way it was handled." Tom thanked him. "I appreciate that. We only want fair treatment." The president sighed. "I understand. Sometimes things get out of hand when people take authority too personally. We'll have a board meeting this week and discuss it." Tom told Maria the news. She felt relieved, but also nervous. "What if they still side with Linda?" she asked. Tom smiled. "Then we'll keep standing our ground. Truth is on our side." That evening, Linda sat inside her house feeling frustrated. She couldn't believe the sheriff had refused to act. She had been part of the HOA for years and believed rules were everything. But now she felt like people were laughing at her. She looked out her window and saw Maria's bright flowers. Her jaw tightened. Meanwhile, Maria and Tom were sitting on their porch again, unaware of Linda's growing anger. They were talking about inviting some neighbors over for tea that weekend. Maria smiled and said, "Maybe we can all get along again. Maybe this will finally bring peace." But deep inside, Tom wondered if it was really over. He could feel that the next few days might bring more surprises. The next few days passed quietly, but everyone in the neighborhood was still talking about what had happened. The story about Linda calling the police spread from house to house. Some people laughed, others shook their heads, and a few were just glad someone had finally stood up to her. Maria tried not to think about it too much. She spent her mornings watering her flowers and trimming her plants as usual. Tom went back to his work schedule, fixing things around the house and helping a neighbor paint his fence. Life was almost normal again, but there was still a small feeling of tension in the air. One afternoon, Maria was baking bread when she heard a loud knock at the door. Tom was outside fixing a loose gate, so she wiped her hands and went to open it. Linda stood there again, holding her clipboard and looking impatient. Her lips were tight and her eyes showed anger. Maria tried to stay polite. "Good afternoon, Linda. How can I help you?" Linda stepped inside the doorway without waiting for an invitation. "We had a board meeting yesterday," she said quickly. "The fine still stands. You have to pay it. The president may have told you they were reviewing it, but the board voted to keep it. You have until Friday." Maria frowned slightly. "I thought the board was going to review everything." "Did they even look at my pictures?" Linda crossed her arms. "We don't need to look at pictures. The decision was already made. The HOA rules must be respected. You can't just ignore them because you feel like it." Maria felt her patience slipping but tried to stay calm. "Linda, I'm not ignoring the rules. I only want fairness. You can't make new rules and fine people before telling them. That's not how it should work." Linda's voice rose. "You people always think you can do whatever you want. This is not just about you. It's about everyone in the neighborhood. If you break the rules, others will think they can too." Maria took a small step back and said softly, "You're making a mistake, Linda. I'm not breaking any rules." Tom came inside when he heard the voices. He looked at Linda and asked, "What's going on?" Linda turned to him quickly. "I'm here to remind you about your fine. It's due this week. If you don't pay, we'll start the collection process. You could lose HOA privileges." Tom raised an eyebrow. "Privileges? What privileges? You mean the right to live in peace?" Linda glared at him. "I'm only doing my job," Tom replied calmly. "Calling the police was not your job either, but you did it." Linda's face turned red. She pointed at them with her pen. "You people are causing trouble for the community," Tom said firmly. "The only trouble is coming from your clipboard. We're not paying a false fine." Linda snapped her folder shut and stormed out of the house. "You'll regret this," she said as she walked away. Maria sighed heavily once the door closed. "This is never going to stop," she said quietly. Tom put an arm around her shoulder. "Don't worry. The truth will win. People are seeing how unreasonable she is." Later that evening, several neighbors gathered outside near the mailboxes. They were whispering and looking around nervously. Rick waved to Tom and Maria and said, "She's at it again." She fined 2 more families today. One for leaving their trash bin out too long and another for painting their door the wrong shade of white. Tom laughed in disbelief. "The wrong shade of white?" "She's going too far," Rick nodded. Everyone's talking about calling a special meeting to vote her out of the board. We've had enough. Maria smiled a little. That might be the best way. She's turning the whole neighborhood against her. The next morning, Maria received another letter. This one was marked urgent. It said if they did not pay the fine within 24 hours, their case would be handed over to an outside collection service. Tom read it and laughed. An outside service? She can't even do that without board approval. Maria nodded. She's just trying to scare us. That afternoon, Tom decided to talk directly to the HOA president, Mr. Clark. He was an older man who had lived in the neighborhood for more than 20 years. Tom knocked on his door and was invited in. Mr. Clark looked tired. Tom, I heard what happened. Believe me, this is getting out of hand. Linda has been very aggressive lately. She doesn't listen to the rest of the board anymore. Tom said, she came to our house again today. She threatened to send collectors after us. This is harassment. Mr. Clark rubbed his forehead. I'm sorry. I'll call an emergency board meeting. We need to discuss her behavior. She's supposed to report to the board, not act on her own. Tom thanked him and went home. He told Maria everything. She felt a bit relieved, but still worried. What if she does something crazy again before the meeting? She asked. Tom shrugged. Then we'll handle it like before. We'll stay calm and keep everything documented. That evening, as the sun was setting, they saw Linda walking down the street again, but this time she wasn't alone. 2 other board members were walking beside her. They stopped in front of Maria's house, talking quietly. Tom and Maria watched from the porch. After a few minutes, the other 2 members walked away, leaving Linda standing there alone. She stared at the house for a moment, then turned and left. The next morning, Maria woke up early and stepped outside. To her surprise, there was another envelope on the porch. She picked it up and opened it. Inside was a handwritten note. It said, "You think you can make me look foolish. You'll see what happens next." There was no signature, but Maria knew who it was from. She showed it to Tom. He looked serious. That's not just about fines anymore. This is turning personal. Maria nodded slowly. Maybe we should call the sheriff again and show him this. Tom agreed. Yes, better safe than sorry. Later that day, the sheriff came to their house again. He read the note and shook his head. This is not right. I can't arrest someone without proof, but I'll file an incident report. If anything else happens, call me right away. Maria thanked him. I just don't understand why she's doing this. It's just a garden. The sheriff said, some people get power and forget it's supposed to serve others, not control them. Word spread quickly about the new note. The neighbors were shocked. Many started supporting Maria and Tom openly. People began signing a petition asking the HOA board to remove Linda from her position. Rick and several others went door to door collecting signatures. By evening, almost every house on the street had signed. Maria was touched by everyone's kindness. For the first time since the trouble began, she felt hopeful. The next day, a board meeting was held in the community hall. Tom and Maria attended, along with many other residents. The room was full and everyone looked tense. Mr. Clark opened the meeting and said, "We are here today to discuss complaints regarding our board member, Linda." Linda stood near the front, holding her clipboard tightly. "I've done nothing wrong," she said loudly. "I'm enforcing the rules. If people don't like it, that's not my problem." One by one, neighbors stood up and shared their experiences. Rick spoke about his fine for the garden hose. Another neighbor mentioned being fined for having small holiday decorations. Maria spoke last. She explained everything that had happened, from the first letter to the sheriff's visit and the note she received. The room was silent as she spoke. When she finished, Mr. Clark stood up. "Thank you, Maria, we have heard enough. The board has decided to remove Linda from her duties, effective immediately. Her actions do not reflect our values." The crowd clapped softly. Linda's face turned pale. She opened her mouth to argue, but no one listened. She left the hall in silence, clutching her clipboard tightly to her chest. After the meeting, many neighbors came to thank Maria and Tom. Rick said with a smile, "You did it. You stood up for everyone." Maria smiled warmly. "We all did it together." As they walked home under the soft glow of the streetlights, Maria felt a deep sense of peace. But Tom looked thoughtful. "I hope it's really over," he said. Maria looked at him and nodded slowly. "Me too." Neither of them knew that Linda still had one last plan in mind. The morning after the board meeting felt brighter for Maria and Tom. The sun shone warmly across their garden. and for the first time in weeks, the air felt peaceful. Maria watered her flowers with a light heart, humming softly as she worked. Neighbors passing by waved and smiled. Everyone seemed happier knowing that Linda's strict rule had finally ended. Tom was sitting on the porch reading the newspaper when Rick stopped by. He looked cheerful and said, "It feels good, doesn't it? The neighborhood already looks friendlier. People aren't afraid to talk outside anymore." Tom smiled. "Yes, it's like a heavy cloud finally moved away. I just hope it stays that way," Rick nodded. "It will. The board is planning new elections soon. They want people who care about the community, not control it." Maria came over with 2 cups of tea. She handed one to Rick and said kindly, "Thank you for standing with us." "You helped a lot," Rick laughed. "I didn't do much. You're the one who stood up when everyone else was quiet." For the next few days, life in the neighborhood slowly returned to normal. Children played in their yards and people talked freely on sidewalks again. The sound of laughter replaced the tense silence that had hung over the street for so long, but one person wasn't at peace. Inside her house, Linda sat at her dining table surrounded by stacks of HOA papers. Her face was pale, and her hands trembled slightly as she flipped through the documents. She felt humiliated after being removed from her position. To her, Maria had caused that humiliation. The thought of it burned inside her mind. She muttered to herself, "They think they can just throw me out like that. I worked hard for years to keep this place perfect." She looked out her window toward Maria's house. Her jaw tightened. She started this. "I'll show them I was right all along." That afternoon, Linda made a phone call. She spoke to a man from a property management company that often worked with the HOA. She told him a story about uncontrolled vegetation and a neighbor who refused to maintain property standards. The man on the other side of the line sounded confused but promised to check the matter. Linda smiled faintly. She believed she had found a way to make trouble again, even without being on the board. Meanwhile, Maria and Tom were busy organizing a small neighborhood gathering. They wanted to celebrate the community's unity after everything that had happened. Maria baked cookies and prepared sandwiches while Tom set up tables in the yard. Rick helped by bringing chairs from his garage. By evening, several families came over. Children ran around and laughter filled the air. Someone brought a guitar and soon there was soft music playing. It was a peaceful evening that reminded everyone of how a neighborhood should feel. Maria looked around and smiled. "This is how it should always be," she said softly to Tom. Tom nodded. Yes, people working together, not against each other. The next morning, Maria went outside to collect the mail. She found another white envelope with no return address. For a second, her stomach tightened, but she forced herself to stay calm. She opened it and saw a printed notice from the property management company. It said there was an outstanding violation under review, and that a possible fine might be added to their property record. Maria felt the blood drain from her face. "Not again," she whispered. She showed the letter to Tom. He read it carefully and frowned. "It's from a management company, not the HOA board." "This must be Linda's doing," Maria sighed. "She's not giving up." Tom shook his head. "Then we won't either. I'll call the company right now." He dialed the number listed on the letter and asked to speak to the officer in charge. After a few minutes, a calm man named Mr. Daniels came on the line. Tom explained everything from the beginning, the false fine, the police visit, and the board meeting that removed Linda. Mr. Daniels listened carefully. "Sir, I appreciate you telling me this. The complaint came from someone claiming to be a current board member. If what you say is true, then this was a false report. We'll suspend this case immediately." Tom thanked him. "I can send proof from the board if needed." Mr. Daniels replied, "That would help. Email me the documents and I'll make sure your record stays clean." After ending the call, Tom looked at Maria and smiled. "It's handled." She tried again, but it didn't work. Maria let out a deep breath. "I don't understand why she's so determined." Tom placed a hand on her shoulder. "Some people can't accept that they're wrong. But now she's alone. Everyone knows the truth." A few hours later, there was a gentle knock at their door. When Maria opened it, she saw the sheriff standing there again. His kind eyes smiled at her. "Good afternoon, ma'am. I just wanted to check in. I heard from the property company that someone sent another false report about you." Maria nodded. "Yes, we got a letter this morning. It's becoming a pattern now." The sheriff sighed. "I figured as much. I wanted to let you know that we're keeping a record of everything. If she continues to harass you, we can take legal action for harassment." Maria looked surprised. So she could actually get in trouble for this? He nodded. Yes, it's one thing to report a rule violation. It's another thing to keep targeting the same person after being told to stop. The board's already filed a complaint against her for misusing HOA resources. Tom stepped forward. Thank you for letting us know, officer. We just want peace, the sheriff smiled. And that's what you'll get. Just keep documenting everything. You've handled this with patience and calm. That's why you're winning. After the sheriff left, Maria felt a quiet strength inside her. She had been scared before, but now she realized she had done nothing wrong. She was not the problem. Linda's anger had only made her look unreasonable in front of everyone. Days passed, and the situation slowly faded from conversation. People were busy planting new flowers, repainting fences, and enjoying the peaceful street once again. The HOA board sent out a letter announcing that Linda had officially been banned from holding any future positions due to repeated misconduct. When Maria read that letter, she smiled softly. It's really over now, she said. Tom grinned. It seems so. Let's hope it stays that way. Later that week, Mr. Clark, the HOA president, visited them personally. He shook their hands and said, I want to thank both of you. You handled everything with grace. Because of you, we're changing the way we run the association. We'll have open discussions before new rules are added. Maria smiled warmly. That's wonderful. I'm glad something good came from all this. Mr. Clark nodded. Sometimes it takes one person standing up to remind everyone what fairness looks like. After he left, Maria walked to her garden. The roses were in full bloom now, bright and beautiful under the sun. She bent down to smell them and smiled to herself. The plants that started all this trouble had become a symbol of peace and patience. Tom joined her outside, placing an arm around her shoulder. You know, he said softly. Those flowers caused us a lot of stress, but they also brought everyone together. Maria laughed gently. Maybe that's what they were meant to do. As the sun dipped low in the sky, the golden light touched every house on the street. Children played with their bikes and neighbors waved to one another. The neighborhood was calm again. From her window, far across the street, Linda watched silently. Her house felt colder now. The phone had stopped ringing and no one waved at her anymore. Deep down, she realized that her need for control had cost her everything. She looked at the community she once ruled and saw that it was happier without her. Maria, unaware of Linda's quiet sorrow, simply enjoyed her evening. She poured 2 cups of tea, handed one to Tom, and sat beside him on the porch. I think peace tastes even better when you've fought for it, she said with a smile. Tom nodded. Yes, and this time it's here to stay. As the stars began to shine, the house felt warm with calm and gratitude. The flowers in Maria's garden swayed gently in the breeze, free and untouchable, just like the peace they had earned. A week passed quietly after the HOA board sent out the letter banning Linda from any future position. The neighborhood was finally calm, and Maria and Tom could enjoy their home without any fear of another envelope or surprise visit. Every morning, Maria walked through her garden with a light heart. She smiled as the soft wind moved through the flowers, and for the first time in many months, she truly felt free. Tom had gone back to his hobby of fixing old furniture in the garage. The sound of light hammering often filled the air, mixing with the laughter of children playing outside. Life was simple again, and that simplicity made everything feel right. One afternoon, Maria was baking cookies when she heard a soft knock on the door. She wiped her hands and opened it to see a woman she did not expect to ever face again. It was Linda. Maria froze for a moment, unsure of what to say. Linda looked different. She was dressed neatly as always, but her face showed clear signs of tiredness. Her eyes didn't carry the same sharp look they used to. Maria finally spoke. Hello, Linda. What brings you here? Linda looked down for a moment and then said quietly, May I come in for a minute? I need to talk. Tom, hearing the voice, came out of the kitchen. He gave Maria a cautious look, but she nodded gently, and they let Linda step inside. The air felt heavy for a few seconds as Linda stood near the living room. She looked around at the neatly arranged house and then at the soft glow of the flowers visible through the window. I know you both don't owe me your time, Linda began, but I wanted to apologize. I was wrong. Maria blinked in surprise. You're apologizing? Linda nodded. Yes, I let power get into my head. When I became HOA president, I thought keeping everything perfect was the only way to make this neighborhood good, but I started acting like a guard instead of a neighbor. I realize now that I hurt people instead of helping them." Tom crossed his arms but kept his tone calm. "It went too far, Linda. You called the cops over flowers. You sent fake fines. You made everyone afraid." Linda lowered her head. "I know, and that's why I'm here. I've been thinking a lot since the board removed me. I even spoke to a counselor. They said I might have been using control to hide my stress and loneliness. I didn't see it then, but they were right." Maria listened quietly. The anger she once felt had faded long ago. Now she just saw a woman who looked lost and tired. Linda continued, "I'm not asking you to forget what I did, but I want to make things right, even in small ways. I've already apologized to the HOA board and to a few neighbors I upset. I wanted to face you too because you were the one who stood up to me. You made me realize how wrong I was." Tom looked at Maria, unsure how to respond. But Maria stepped closer to Linda and said softly, "Apology doesn't erase the past, but it's a good start." "I hope you really mean it," Linda nodded slowly. "I do. I don't expect forgiveness right away, but I hope someday the neighborhood will see me differently." Maria smiled faintly. "That's up to time. But I think the first step is to live peacefully and not let the past define you." Linda looked relieved. "Thank you, Maria, and Tom, I'm sorry for the trouble I caused. I've already told the property company that the complaint I made was false. They said they would clear your record completely." Tom nodded. "That's good to hear. I appreciate you doing that." Linda turned to leave, but before she reached the door, Maria said, "Would you like to take some cookies with you? They just came out of the oven." Linda hesitated, then smiled slightly. "I'd like that." Maria packed a few in a small container and handed them over. Linda took them gently, thanked her again, and left. When the door closed, Tom exhaled deeply. "That was unexpected," Maria nodded. "Yes, it was. But maybe it's good. It's time to move forward." Later that evening, the sun began to set, painting the sky in soft orange and pink colors. The neighborhood was peaceful again, and people were outside watering their lawns or chatting by their fences. Rick stopped by their house holding a small flyer. "Hey, the new HOA election is next week," he said cheerfully. "We're voting for new members. Guess who everyone wants to nominate?" Maria smiled knowingly. "Don't tell me," Rick laughed. "You. Everyone says you'd make a fair and kind board member." Maria laughed softly. "Oh, I don't know about that. I'm not sure I want to get into that role after everything." Tom smiled. "You'd be great at it. You understand fairness and kindness better than anyone." Rick nodded. "You wouldn't need to make strict rules. Just make sure people are treated equally. That's all we want." Maria thought for a moment and then said, "All right, I'll consider it." That night, she sat on the porch with Tom, sipping tea. The stars began to appear and the soft sound of crickets filled the air. "I never thought I'd see the day when Linda would apologize," Tom said. Maria smiled. Maybe she just needed someone to show her that control isn't respect. Sometimes people think power will make them respected, but it only makes them feared. Tom nodded. "You're right. And you showed everyone that kindness doesn't mean weakness." A week later, the community gathered for the election. Chairs were arranged in a circle in the park, and families came with their kids. The atmosphere was light and happy. Mr. Clark, the old president, opened the meeting with a smile. "We're here to vote for new board members who will guide this community with fairness and respect," he said. "We've had a rough season, but now we move forward." When it was time for nominations, several hands went up for Maria. She felt shy as everyone clapped. Mr. Clark smiled. "Maria, would you like to say a few words?" She stood up slowly and looked around at her neighbors. "I never wanted to lead anything," she began softly. "But I do believe that a good neighborhood isn't built on fear or fines. It's built on trust, understanding, and kindness. I don't want to control anyone. I just want to make sure everyone feels safe and respected here." The crowd clapped warmly. Some even stood up in support. After voting, Maria was chosen as one of the new board members. Rick and another kind neighbor, Laura, joined her. Together, they promised to make new rules only through open discussions. The weeks that followed showed a real change. The HOA stopped sending harsh notices and started sending friendly reminders. Instead of fines, they offered help to neighbors who needed it. People painted fences together, shared garden tools, and even started a monthly picnic. One afternoon, while Maria was helping a neighbor plant new flowers, she saw Linda walking her dog across the street. Linda waved lightly. Maria smiled and waved back. There was no bitterness anymore, only quiet understanding. Tom watched from the porch, smiling. "Looks like peace finally found its home," he said. Maria nodded, her hands covered in soil but her heart full of calm. Yes, it did. Sometimes peace isn't given, it's built one act of kindness at a time. As evening came, the sun cast a warm glow across every house. The street looked alive with laughter, and the flowers in Maria's garden swayed gently in the breeze. The fight that once divided the neighborhood had ended, replaced by trust and friendship. And the woman who once caused chaos had learned her lesson in silence. For Maria and Tom, it was more than a victory. It was a reminder that standing up for what is right, even quietly, can change everything, and so, their small street became what it was always meant to be, a place where people cared for one another, where rules were fair, and where peace finally stayed.